Hey folks, this is Carl from My Vantage Point podcast here with another episode. I'm actually going to, with this episode here is actually going to be a kickoff of multiple different episodes about with ADHD. I feel this is going to be important to for me to actually to go over this here with everybody. Go over some of the symptoms for this episode. Go over some of the symptoms and potentially the root cause of why this is happening. And that, all the other ones I'm going to touch on with different things in regards with that correlates with ADHD. But before I go ahead and get started here, I just want to let everybody know I do have a podcast on Spotify right now. It's called From My Perspective. You can just go on Spotify, type in From My Perspective, or you type in Carl Maroney, and just click the follow button, and also click the notification bell. Just like you can do here, hit the follow button and notification bell to actually get more episodes and videos uploaded. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with this episode here. Now, like I said, this episode is going to be the kickoff of a series of episodes or videos about with ADHD. This first episode is actually going to be living with ADHD, and with it, like I said, with ADHD, it's something that really actually kind of goes unnoticed, especially in adults. And what led me to do this episode? What led me to actually find out if I do have it is because my oldest daughter, my wife and I had actually noticed our oldest daughter over the last couple of years actually had trouble with her math, especially right after the pandemic had it was started and stopped. So in this past school year, the 2022-2023 school year, she got tested. I think with children and adults are tested differently. With children, they go through a series of tests to see if they do have ADHD. With adults, you can actually look on websites. I looked on WebMD and also looked on Mayo Clinic and also Healthline, and I went through all of the the symptoms or with the traits of ADHD. So in regards with ADHD, according to Healthline.com, 8.4% of children and 2.5% of adults are affected by ADHD. Some symptoms or traits of ADHD are inattentiveness, or becoming bored easily, talking over people, lack of focus. Especially when they can be distracted very easy, but also too they can also have a hard time listening, and in conversations. The lack of focus, I call it the squirrel effect, where they kind of just their mind just drifts off and think of other things. But also too on the flip side of that too is that hyper focus, where people with ADHD, they can be distracted very easily, but also too they can also focus. They do like a laser focus on stuff, especially the stuff that they like. And I'll talk about with hyperfocus in a lot more detail. But they get so engrossed in something that the person becomes unaware of everything else that's around them, especially other people as well. They forget to do other stuff. Also too with ADHD, anxiety and restlessness kind of goes hand in hand with ADHD. Their mind tends to worry about things constantly. I've noticed that with myself. I still do a little bit, even though I'm on medication. I still become anxious at times. Restlessness. There are times where I do, even on medication, I do become restless. I feel like I just have to constantly do something. Move around a lot. I feel like I have to do something. If you're sitting there, I feel like you have to tap your hands or move your feet. Also, too, you move around quite a bit in your seat. You find it difficult. Some people find it difficult even to sit still. in their seat. They move around way too much. Emotional concerns sometimes, when you're doing something for excitement, um, due to becoming bored, um, and you can become less focused on this, become less you can yeah, little frustrations can also bring on depression or mood swings. Time management concerns. Basically, what happens with this is that it goes kind of along with um, hyper focus, where you become, you know, you can become disorganized. When it comes to time management, efficiency issues, um, you procrastinate on stuff. Sometimes you either get hyper focused on something, or you could say, I'll procrastinate, or you put the task off later. You sometimes some ADHD, people have ADHD. They show up late for everything. Some ADHD people have ADHD. They're afraid of showing up late, so they show up way too early for stuff. Sometimes they ignore assignments. They ignore doing stuff because it's boring. Um, and so the reason behind this is having trouble focusing is because I'm getting ahead of myself here. So, and this often is great importance with ADHD people that because they have a reason behind it is having trouble focusing, on the future or the past, or having they try to focus on the now, which often is more important. They focus on some people focus way too much on the future. Some people focus way too much on the past instead of actually focusing on the present. Um, that can actually be an issue. Forgetfulness. I know there are some people who have a lot on their plate and they tend to forget things on occasion. But with people who have ADHD, forgetfulness happens a lot more often. I could literally, because I might have the week off for work, and I wanted to get things done right away, like cleaning the dishes. I got the dishes done, put stuff. Well, I cleaned up the living room, or tried to, because I wanted to do it while I'm thinking about it. If I sat down and not do it, I'm gonna just put it off until later on. Um, in that regards with that whole situation there. But yeah, if I don't do it at that moment, I'll forget. Now, in regards with this whole situation here, with how to manage, or how do people with how to live with ADHD, or people live with ADHD, or what we can do. So you can actually talk to your doctor about some options, including medications. When I went to the doctor for my physical in February, I did bring it up in situations, and we discussed some options where we talked about with taking some stimulants like Adderall and all the other ones. And he talks about how we have to go in a lot more often. You have to sign a waiver because like just narcotics, pretty much, and you have to get tested, stuff like that. You have to sign a waiver saying that you're not going to distribute them. And then there's the non-stimulant kind. One of them is being Wellbutrin, which I decided actually to take. So discuss some options. Maybe even go online. You can go onto different websites on how to manage your time. And also how to manage your emotions. What else you can do too. I've actually had taken a plan where I'm taking medication. I do listen to music quite often, especially I listen to, like in the morning. For me, in the morning, I'll listen to Kansas a little bit. To kind of their music is complex, but yet then again it's easy to listen to. So that kind of helps me through it. And then I maybe listen to a little bit something that's different than that. Maybe something that's a little more heavier than that. To kind of help me, to kind of help keep me focused here. Identify some of the characteristics that you may have, and come up with a plan. Each person with ADHD has different ADHD traits. So find a way that you can that'll help you to make your life a little bit easier, and also how to cope with it, especially when spots get get into hard times. So, couple final thoughts here, is that the list I just gave you is actually due to one result, and I'll talk about this in another episode. But all of those, the list I just went over with you, is actually as a result of, after my own study, after doing my own research, is actually the lack of dopamine in your brain. So like the forgetfulness, the hyperfocus, getting bored very easily, tapping, restlessness, anxiousness, easy distracted, or lack of focus, or hyperfocus, inattentiveness, all of that, emotional concerns, all that, time management, that's all forgetfulness. That's all tied to dopamine, because according to the it's called Attitude. It's ADDTUDE.mag.com. It says there's a lack of dopamine in your brain. So that's why you have all that. And like I said, I'm going to go over I have some episodes I want to do next that actually kind of help you with that. And medications actually help with that too. That's actually that's one of my final thoughts. The other one is that having an ADHD is not a bad thing, and people who have it are not stupid either. Just because a person has ADHD, their brain, as I mentioned, their brain works differently than people who don't have it. Their thought processes are a lot different. If you were to open up my brain, if you look into my eyes, look into my thoughts, sometimes my thoughts are like all over the place, and sometimes my thoughts are like really crazy. I can come up with, also too, another thing too is that overthink. That's one thing I forgot to mention, is that overthinking is a concern too, because I overthink way too much, and I go down this rabbit trail. And like I said, I'll talk about that part. I'll talk about each individual thing a little bit later on. But if you look into a person with ADHD, they're not bad people. They're not stupid. It's the fact that their brain works a lot differently due to the fact, because of not having enough dopamine in their brain, have not enough dopamine and serotonin. And people who have ADHD, as I mentioned, I just touched on this, where people with ADHD, they process things a little bit more differently than other people. Sometimes, like I said, with hyperfocus, they're on it. They focus on that one thing until it's done. And if they like doing it, they're focused on that thing until it's done. Some other times, if they don't want to do that one particular thing because it's boring, they will do other stuff. They will go on this rabbit trail sort of thing. But yeah, it's just and also too, it's like with the brain, with the ADHD brain, it runs a little bit differently. I wish I could stop people having ADHD, but they're here. People with ADHD are here. They're here to stay. For some people, like, oh, I don't like this, but you know what? It is what it is. But I hope y'all have a good day. I hope this helps out with people who are trying to find out if you have ADHD. I recommend you studying it, reading up on it, talking to your doctor about it. That's the main thing there, is getting the help that you need if you have it. Well, I hope y'all have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon.